So welcome to the Leaders in Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Nick Carman, and I hope this proves to be a mentor in your pocket for the future leaders of real estate. I really want to be able to empower you to develop your skills wherever you might sit in real estate investment and development. Now, we're going to be talking about the challenges, the obstacles, and the benefits of leadership with the aid of our mentors' own experience. So let's go. So today I'm joined by Tammy Kelly, and Tammy is the MD and head of US Multifamily Asset Management and Ops for EQT Real Estate. Now, over the course of her career, she's completed over $4 billion in transactions, leading teams of more than 175 people. So who better to lead a real estate masterclass on leadership? Tammy, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, not the slightest, not the slightest. Now, why don't we get started? Tell us a little bit about your role today.
As managing director and head of asset management and operations, my role is to oversee our multifamily assets throughout the country. EQT Real Estate not only has a platform in multifamily, but also industrial, both in the United States, Asia, and Europe.
Fantastic stuff. Let's dig in a little bit. So that's today. In a nutshell, how's your career developed?
In a nutshell, my career has developed, I think, a lot through relationships that I've developed over time, and like how most of us get to where we're going by hard work.
Okay then. Well, let's dig into those early days then. What do you think drove you in those earliest days?
The early days, what drove me is the opportunity to learn and excel in what I was doing. I was fairly young when I started my career. I did not go to college in the traditional route. So I wanted to, I had something to prove to myself mostly. And that drove my career.
I was going to ask you now a question about that slightly, because you've opened the door there to a different route. Tell us more. Why was this different?
It was different for a number of different reasons. So when I had, after I'd graduated high school, let me actually back up a minute. So I grew up in a family-oriented business. My parents owned a retail store, and my brothers and I grew up in that store. Like when we were old enough to reach a cash register, we were working in the store. And that, I think taught us a lot of different things and would never let us get into trouble because we lived in a small town and everybody knew where we belonged. But it taught me, I should say, different aspects of a business, customer service, and different responsibilities as I was growing up. So point being is when I graduated high school, for some family reasons, I was not able to go directly into college. So I stayed at the store helping support the family. And then at some point after, things had stabilized a little bit, my dad had looked at me and said, okay, now go get a real job, go out into the world. You need to go do your thing. So that led to one opportunity, and another opportunity led to my first opportunity within commercial real estate. And so along the way, it was still important to me to learn and to continue my education, and still a believer in lifelong education. So I started going to night school while working full time. And it took a while, and it was a lot of start and stop, and it was a class here and a class there, and over the weekends. And as I was, continuing my career, I was continuing to go to school while traveling and, doing all of the things adults have to do. And, was not a traditional route whatsoever. I would not necessarily recommend doing that route. But for me, it seemed to work. And what I think one of the important takeaways that I benefited through that time period is, as I was actually, one, I was paying for it all myself. So I think, that comes with a little bit more responsibility to want to succeed. But also what I was really able to do is take like the practical classroom applications and apply them in real time. And I think for me, it hit, and it was helpful for both my personal education and development, but I also think I benefited through my career, at least at least early on, and in being able to do that and understand truly what I was learning and how to apply it in a real time setting.
We are definitely going to have to unpack lots of that, and let's see some of the how that's affected your career later on. But we'll come back to it. So our audience today is going through what I think is the biggest challenge they will, let's say, sort of have to overcome anywhere in their career. And that is that change and shift then from being that solo producer, that standout member of a team, to managing and leading that team. But before we dive into your thoughts on exactly how they master that, when was your first opportunity to lead?
In a professional setting, I guess it was fairly early on in my career. I was working for a company that owned grocery anchored shopping centers throughout the country. And they were looking to expand their platform and were going to be opening satellite offices. So I rose my hand and said, "Hey, I want to go open the satellite office that you're thinking about opening in Chicago." And that was something that was, I think, a good fit for both the company and myself. And so I had the opportunity to you know move from Indiana, where I was at the time, to a suburban Chicago location to open a location for them. And at that time, the while the office was small, it was a lot of oversight responsibilities for that office location, the build out, and so forth and so on. And then the support team that we hired to be at that office all ran through initially myself. So that, I think, was my first opportunity, as well as then just my job itself led to different leadership opportunities in different ways. It wasn't maybe necessarily, and I think this is an important, recognition. Leadership isn't necessarily managing people. It is perhaps managing systems, perhaps managing processes, and a lot of leadership is honestly, and it's perhaps cliche, but leading by example. So, I think that that starts early in your career, no matter what you're doing. It may not necessarily, again, be managing people, but as you're managing a process or a functionality, you can be leading if people are looking up to you and looking to you for as an.
Did you feel ready in those early days of leadership?
I did. I was probably too young and dumb to
Why?
know, but
What gave you that? You answered that so quick. What gave you the confidence?
I felt like I just felt confident in understanding what I was doing, like from a day-to-day perspective. And I I had great leadership around me, and that, I think, lends confidence to people. But I did. I felt ready, and perhaps that was some ignorance, but that's okay too. But because we all grow with experience, so I didn't really think twice about it. I kind of set a goal and went after it.
Okay, then. What type of leader are you?
Hmm. Well, I'd like to think that I'm a leader that it works alongside a team. And I very much try to ensure that I'm not asking of anybody anything that I wouldn't give and do and have or do myself. So I think that I would say I'm an active leader.
Do you know what the people said about your leadership?
Let's hear it.
So I've been doing some digging. Okay, so I've spoken to two people who have been in your teams before, and I love this. I'm absolutely going to steal this. So this is what one of those individuals described. She said, "Tammy is a ninja.
Oh,
She gets the job done to the highest standards, but without any fanfare or need for recognition." Do you recognize that? Does that sound like Tammy?
yes.
Wow. How do you do that then without any self-interest?
Well, in the scenario, if I'm recalling who you're talking to correctly or who had said that correctly. It was, it's something I believe in. And it's, when you feel passionate about whether it's an organization or your career or, a hobby that you like and you want to see that succeed, it doesn't feel like work to do it.
I'll take that. I'll take that. So let's keep thinking about sort of your past experiences, particularly maybe some of your early leadership sort of decisions. Are there any mistakes that still haunt you today?
Sure, absolutely. And I think that those, it's important. And again, it sounds cliche, but it's important to fail and to make those mistakes, to continue to learn and build your experiences and to recognize perhaps how to not make the same mistake going forward. And so yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I would, you know, have always thought perhaps that I'm a great communicator, but there's definitely been instances where I've missed on that, and that's and perhaps even sometimes, like that could have led to other issues. And so,
Anything
I-
you're thinking about in particular?
y-
Is there a
y-
time that you think you've got in your mind?
yeah, there's a particular time I was, that I, in my mind, I had thought I made a situation clear. And this is one of those tests, what is it? Perception is 99% of the reality, right? So I thought I had made something clear, but the audience and whom I was communicating to, they weren't clear on that. And so in that instance, I had to really go back and reflect and be like, how could I have handled that differently? How could I have done something better? And what are those takeaways? And candidly, like, just you own up to it. I mean, I'm a big believer in that. Like, we all make mistakes. We're human. But when you make a mistake, you got to own it, and most importantly, learn from it. And when there are those opportunities, and this particular one is, while it may not have been a huge deal, but it is absolutely something that still sticks with me because again, in my head, I thought I was doing things that everybody understood, or was handling a situation that everybody understood, and the audience did not, and their perception was the one that counted, not mine, right? So it's just one of those things. I think there are important life lessons to take away from those things. And if you and again, when you make a mistake, own it, but most importantly, learn from it. And then let it go. I mean, then you do truly need to let it go. You can't keep beating yourself up about it, but take the opportunity to understand how you can do something different in the future, and do that.
Okay. So during our research, there's someone else who's worked for you before that introduced something what I thought was a really interesting aspect of your leadership style. And then let me make sure I've got this accurate. So they quoted you as saying progress over perfection.
Okay.
And I thought this was really interesting. Now, I'm going to give you a quote of what they said to me in our conversations. In Tammy's team, I felt really empowered. So did our whole team. We felt safe to try new ideas, and she was always quick to give credit. And to her, we were drilled in the idea of progress over perfection. It meant we trialed new ideas, honed them, and the results showed. Now, I want to dig into that. To someone who's a new leader, this idea that mistakes could happen could be terrifying,
Sure.
especially when they're not your mistakes, right?
Sure.
So, how did you manage this?
One thing, you just as a leader, I think it is important to I you know appreciate that comment, that your team feels safe. Your team absolutely needs to feel safe. And as a leader, it is, and I'll answer your question in a minute, but it is important to take on that responsibility. Like, you succeed as a team, you fail as a team. It's not one single person. So if they're, as a leader, perhaps your responsibility is to manage that team, but also to manage up. So making sure you're managing up and giving your team that freedom to continue to develop and to succeed and grow their career. But in that process, if there are mistakes, if you will, or something that was missed, ensuring that you're managing that up and you're taking that responsibility and not pushing that down to somebody less experienced to be able to do that. And then, so to get back to your initial question, the progress over perfection, I think like what I have seen is when you're in a situation in which I think that, in which you're trying to like either start a new initiative or you're trying to, correct a problem and you don't know quite where to begin, then everybody gets paralyzed. Like they're like nothing will get done. So you got to kind of start somewhere. And a new initiative is maybe a great example of that. Like I think if you go into it and you've done, you've kind of done your research, if you will, or you kind of know where you want the end result to be, you got to start. And you got to go into this with an open mind. And first and foremost, which is really important, I'm sure I've missed on before, but I think a lot of leaders miss on, explain the why. Explain the why to the team that if it's a change or something new or something even like I've never even thought of before, and everybody's going to look at you like you're crazy, we can't do that. But explain what you know but we need to try this because of the why. So ensuring that your team first and foremost knows the why and has like buy-in then to how you're going to start a new initiative, I think is really truly important. But as a leader, I think it's also important to understand that where you start will likely not at all be where you finish. And that's okay. You got to start making progress forward, and then evaluate along the way and make adjustments and take the feedback and take the criticism and hear it. Don't defend it, hear it, make changes, and then continuing to move forward. And that's how you get progress, over perfection. You'll ultimately get to the end goal, and it probably won't look exactly like in your mind how you thought it was going to look in the beginning, but it's going to be better if you started it and you took the feedback along the way and you made the adjustments, and you're going to have better buy-in for it as well.
That. Love that. Okay, well, let's change this up a bit. Let's ask you a few more let's say a bit more reflection sort of questions. Do you think leadership has changed for today's generation?
I think it has to change a little bit. I think again, like being an effective leader is being able to communicate appropriately throughout an organization. And that's all the verticals and at every level. And I think, it's really interesting in today's work environment. You have so many different generations working together. And I think that if you're not making changes to your communication and your leadership style, then you're not hitting everybody that you need to hit, and you're not connecting with everybody on your team or within your organization. And by default, I think that hurts you, and it doesn't, give the right empowerment throughout the organization that's needed.
Yeah, I agree with that. When you're interviewing, we've talked about just the scale of these teams that you lead now. So when you're interviewing, when you're considering adding future leaders to your team, what's the number one trait that you look for?
That's a great question. And this is actually a piece of, what a former partner and boss said to me, and it's always stuck with me because it's always been really true. You know, I think if you get to the point where you're interviewing somebody like at least on paper they have the skills. You want to understand like how it's going to be a fit both for you and them and in the culture, in the company culture. And one of the principals for a company I used to work for said to me at some point, he's like, when I'm meeting with people, I want to know if I can sit with them on on a plane across the world. And if that would, if you sit next to somebody next to a plane on a plane for 14 hours and that would be okay with you, like that's the test. And I think, and it's sometimes it's hard to grab that in an initial interview for sure. But I think again, it's like making sure you have that good rapport because as professionals, we can all learn different skill sets. I think it's the connection to ensure that that there's going to be a good working environment. And I think you appreciate that for sure as you get older in your career and more mature in your career. That's really important. So if I can sit with them across the world, that's on an airplane. That's the test.
Okay then. All right then. Well, listen, we touched on drive a bit early on, and you told us that fantastic sort of story about how you came into the industry, and that's that real work ethic then as well that you've been built up on. Do the same things drive you today that did earlier in your career?
Perhaps. Yeah. I mean, perhaps. I mean, I think what drives me today, maybe not. I think what drives me today is a little bit different. I mean, I think it is more about ensuring, that I want to be in an environment where there is empowerment for all of the teams and where where there's opportunity for folks to grow and to learn and to fail and to do all of the things that we need to do to continue to grow in our careers. But I think like again, culture is really important. And I think that when you're younger, you don't know what that means as much. And for me, like being in an environment where there's great camaraderie, where there's mutual respect throughout an organization is really important. And so what drives me is to hopefully be contributing to that. And that is a big driver, right? I mean, a lot of times in our professional careers, you're spending much more time with your teammates and in at your company than you're spending with your family. And you want to be contributing and be adding to and be in a one of those environments where you want to be there.
Well, that is a brilliant segue, Tammy. You talked about family, you talked about time away. So, I mean, these are some of the common detractors, aren't they, from a leadership position? Sometimes we have to make compromises. Is it worth it?
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, yes, I think so. I think that, one of the things that I take away is having been involved in again so many amazing organizations and worked alongside so many amazing people. But I think like what for me, what I think my kids see from me is imperfection for sure. But I think they see strength, and I think that that's important for them to see as well. And while maybe they don't like the late nights or the travel or different things, I mean, I think that, what I've tried to do is really explain to them as to the why and ensure that they feel heard and understand as well. So all that being said, yes, I think the balance, I think you can find the right balance and make it all work.
The Tammy who was working in your parents' shop, Tammy behind that till, do you think she'd be proud of Tammy today?
I think so. Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
be curious, did you think this was achievable back then?
No, probably not. But I didn't know how big the world was back then, like honestly. So so no, I don't know that I had any vision of that of where I would be today. But nonetheless, I'm here. I mean, and I think I said this to you prior too. Like it's very easy to have imposter syndrome as well is to kind of take a step back and you know be- not fully appreciate or understand perhaps how you are perceived to other people, and that can be humbling.
Surely the Tammy who was so confident, I asked that question about, were you feel ready for that leadership role? You went, yes. That Tammy does not feel imposter syndrome, does she?
For sure. That there's been absolutely certain times where, I've taken on a challenge that, or not, it's not really a challenge, opportunities, different positions within even this company that I didn't know if potentially I was ready for. But I did it and I have I've gained different experiences from it. And that has done nothing but I hope made me a better leader and manager and team member, and hopefully, contributed to the organization as much as they've given me back.
Okay. Let's talk to our audience directly. Yeah. This is a one-to-one mentoring session, with Tammy. So that individual who might feel they're not ready, or they feel that imposter syndrome as they're on the brink of accepting their first leadership role, what's your advice?
Have self-reflection, like really like what is it that you want? I do think it's important to ask that question. I do think it's important to recognize that not everybody wants to, and again, and I think it is like leadership comes in different ways. But when it comes to potentially managing people, do you want to manage people? Like, is that really what you want to do? And be honest with yourself, and don't set yourself up for something that you're going to be unhappy with. So first and foremost, have that self-reflection. But if you have that self-reflection and you want that opportunity, clearly other people think you're qualified for it if you're being tapped on the shoulder. So take it, grab it, and go with it, and be aware of along the way. And I think it's important to ask feedback along the way, and but take the opportunity and run with it.
Okay then. Well, let's carry on this sort of this one-to-one then with our mentor. What's one book, podcast, YouTube series, what it may well be, what do you recommend that any future leader gets involved in, gets immersed in?
Well, that's interesting. So by default, I read I read mostly fiction. And that's kind of like my way of the escape from reality. I don't
Yeah.
really do a lot of TV, but I think what I would recommend and what I have recommended, and because we are, I don't know, maybe this is even more important today because of how connected we are to technology, is to actually put that down. Take the time for yourself and recharge, however that comes, whether it's podcasts, whether it's books, whether it's TV, whether it's of course, the gym and yoga or whatever, like whatever that is for you, you need to absolutely do that. But for your professional and personal growth, what I think is really important is make yourself network. Make yourself go to the industry related networky coffee, events, or the luncheons, and, or show up at one of the, events, and you may not know anybody, and that's okay, but make yourself do that. There's 1,000 excuses on any level as to why we don't have time to do it, whether it's something is due, or your inbox is a disaster, or you're going on, you need to go on vacation and the next day, and you just don't have time to do it all. That's all true. And it's always going to be true. But you need to make that time to network, because that networking, and when that starts, early in your career, and you continue to build that, and those networks that you make like I said, early in your career and along the way, those people are, developing and growing at the, within that pace as well. Those are going to be the future people you do business with. Those are going to be the future people that you hire with, and you have that mentorship with. And it's critically important. Make yourself do it. It's not comfortable. I think that I don't know that anybody really likes to do it, but I think it's rewarding. I think once you do it, you feel like you've gotten something out of it. It's an opportunity to, hopefully fill your cup, if you will. And it kind of helps to get that reset of making those connections and feeling energized, and take that back with you. And those relationships, if you continue to cultivate them, they will grow. And that's how you'll see future opportunities. And that might be in employment, it might be in business, it might be, personally, but you'll see opportunities from that.
Right, Sammy, we need to start wrapping this up, but I'm gonna squeeze as much as I can from this session. So two last questions for you. What would you say is one thing every future leader needs to know?
I would say I think what's important is to be self-aware, and to have self-confidence, and understand to use that, when to use your voice, when to speak up. And I think it's important that, you might be in a situation where you're surrounded by other professionals that may have, you know, different positions than you and are more senior to you. And if you see something that, doesn't make sense, and I say this a lot, on both professionally and personally, if it doesn't make sense, ask the question. Like, just because, like, generally speaking, you're on to something. If it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense, then have that confidence to ask the question and or to point it out, to that, of course, very respectfully, but use your voice and have that confidence.
Last question. Best way to grow as a leader?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of different opportunities, but I think that being very collaborative with other team members throughout throughout any organization is really important. Of course, being able to do the work and being skilled at your craft, however, whatever that looks like, is important. But I think, like, putting in the hard work and having that collaboration and ensuring that you are known as one of those people that other people come to for questions or come to for special projects, or like they want to go to lunch with you. Those are all things that are really important. And you may not even realize it at the time, but if that's where you are, if you're in that, circle that you're getting tapped on the shoulder for different projects, and you're being asked to, listen to, just come into this meeting to listen to the conversation, that's you're on your way. And understand that. And then, ask the questions. And I think also what is important, and what's also very important, and it's not perhaps known to your existing leaders. If you want something, you need to ask for it. If you want to be in a different position, if you want to excel, if you want a leadership role, if you want to be in a different vertical within your company, you need to make sure it's known. Your existing, leaders may not know that that's what you want. And you need to make sure you have that opportunity and that rapport to very clearly lay out, like, this is where I am and this is where I'd like to be in 1 year from now and 2 years from now and 3 years from now, whatever it is. How can I do this? What do I need to be focusing on now to help me get where I want to be? And if that's known to and you have a good leader, they're going to help you get there. And maybe again, it's, progress over perfection. Maybe it's not exactly where you thought you'd end up, but you're going to end up in a different place if you are asking for that opportunity, and then you're taking that feedback that you do get back and you're doing something with it. Just don't ignore it.
Well, Tammy, we've got to wrap this up, but I am absolutely going to take away progress over perfection with me. You've been listening to the Leaders in Real Estate podcast. Make sure you click the like and subscribe button, and put in the comments any questions you want to be asked next time we sit down with one of our mentors. Tammy, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.